when you listen to students and you really give them an opportunity to have their voices amplified, they're going to share with you what their challenges are.
Welcome to School and Around, a podcast hosted by Branching Minds, featuring prominent leaders, subject matter experts, and thought innovators with their perspectives on the current challenges facing K-12 education. I'm your host, Larissa Napolitan, a former teacher, instructional coach, and a member of the Branching Minds team, here to lead conversations with educational leaders and experts and to shine a light on phenomenal educators and those that are on a mission to transform our schools and the lives of students. If you didn't know, Branching Minds provides a ton of great resources for implementing MTSS, like our newsletter and our upcoming live virtual mini summit in June. Check out our show notes for links to sign up for both. On this podcast, we have talked about the mental health crisis for students at length. And so we don't want to just talk around the issue. We actually want to share stories about ways that schools are addressing the mental health crisis with students and taking initiative to make changes. And so today I'm excited to share about an initiative in the New Orleans public schools led by Dr. Avis Williams, who's the superintendent. And Dr. Williams has been a superintendent for the district for 2 years, but before that, and you've been a school leader and district leader for a while. And so you have lots of experience to share with us. So welcome, Dr. Williams.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here. And you're absolutely right that focusing on and being able to talk about mental health as it relates to education is necessary now. And we're certainly happy with the things that we're currently doing. And of course, looking at how we will expand in the future as well.
Well, I want to give you a chance to kind of share a little bit about your background and maybe just a little bit about your current role and how you kind of got to be able to lead the New Orleans public schools and maybe even just what inspired you to become a school leader.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, again, Avis Williams, proud superintendent of NOLA Public Schools, originally from Salisbury, North Carolina, and it's a small, fairly rural town, not too far from Charlotte. Grew up in poverty, and grew up knowing I wanted to be a teacher. I was that kid that used to line my dolls up playing school, and of course, was always the teacher. So knew I wanted to be a teacher, and the thing that I sometimes reflect on in my own schooling is the fact that despite the fact that I was smart, made good grades, no adult ever talked to me about going to college. And I think most of them knew that I planned to follow my older brother and sister's footsteps and join the Army, which I did. And proud U.S. veteran of the Army. And I oftentimes wonder what my life would have been like had I known all of my options. And so as an educator, for me now, one of the things that really drives me, that drives my why, is making sure that young people, and especially scholars who look like me, know their options and are prepared to be successful in whatever they want to do, and whether it's going straight into the workforce, going to college, or joining the military like I did. I do want our scholars to be able to navigate that pathway and make decisions for themselves and own that for themselves. So that's one of the things that drives me. After getting out of the Army, I landed in Huntsville, Alabama. And so most of my career was in Alabama. I served as a high school and middle school teacher, taught English and physical education my first couple of years, and then writing and English composition. I served as a middle school assistant principal as my first administrative role. And then I took a big leap. My first principalship was at an elementary school. And I love the babies. That was a lot more challenging than I thought. I was one of those traditional secondary educators who, wondered, what are they doing in middle school that these babies are coming to me not prepared? And then as a middle school teacher,
as a middle school teacher, I get it. I get what you're saying.
And I did the same same thing at middle school. And then being at the beginning, being at an elementary school was so enlightening, just for me to understand how hard elementary teachers work, and the challenges that they face, when, especially when working with our families in poverty, when oftentimes our babies come to us not being prepared to work on grade level yet. But I did serve as an elementary principal for 4 years, a middle school principal for 3 years, and then I was also a high school principal before leaping into my first central office job. And ultimately landed in Selma, Alabama, and was superintendent there for 5 years before coming to New Orleans. And as you stated, I'm coming into my second year as superintendent in NOLA Public Schools in New Orleans.
Well, that is, I love hearing, especially superintendents and the background that many have of just the different types of roles, and I'm
Mhm.
sure that maybe being in the different types of schools that you were in really help you have
Yeah.
perspective and lead your teams really well because you've been in their shoes. And so I think that that is amazing. And I can tell from your passion about student success has really kind of led you into this position. And even just this work and this initiative particularly, we talk a lot here, kind of our research about student mental health and about how that
Mhm.
like 60 to 70% of students are, need that social emotional support.
Absolutely.
They're identified and as that. And so have you felt that shift in NOLA, and maybe what are some specific strategies or practices that your district is implementing to proactively identify and support those students with that
Yeah.
social emotional support?
Absolutely, and we oftentimes at this point in life go back to the pandemic and talk about not just the impact that the pandemic had, but the things that it revealed. Because the
Mhm.
need for talking about mental health and for really leaning into social and emotional learning didn't start with the pandemic, but
No,
the
you're right.
pandemic certainly exacerbated it, and gave us a real push to make sure that we were very intentional at how we viewed mental health. And of course, I was in Selma at the time, but Selma and New Orleans have a lot in common as it relates to the high poverty, the high crime, and the number of families that are living in situations of trauma, whether it's situational or, something that's ongoing in terms of the trauma. And so even while I was in Selma, that was something that we had to prioritize because our scholars can't learn if they're not well,
Yeah.
physically as well as emotionally and mentally.
Mhm.
And so when I began looking at the opportunity in New Orleans, one of the things that was put on my plate right out the gate, even during the interview process, was to ensure that I came in with some ideas around supporting mental health. And even I had students who interviewed me during the interviewing process. And one of the questions that they asked was, what do you plan to do to support the mental health of students if you're superintendent? And so it was one of the things that I prioritized. And even during the course of my listening and learning tour, which I called the ABC tour, Dr. Avis's beignets and conversation. And it was an opportunity for me to talk to the community, to introduce myself, but also to learn more about what the community needed. And mental health supports was always one of the topics that came up, regardless of the stakeholder group. And so the one thing that we've done is to try to prioritize it in such a way that we can normalize talking about mental health.
Mm.
And this year we implemented what we call the mental minute. And the thing I love about the mental minute is that it makes it digestible. We're
Mhm.
not asking for anyone to have to dive into a 90-minute yoga class or, to have to read books on meditation. Although I recommend both. It doesn't take that just, to be able to process wellness and mental health.
Yeah.
And the mental minute was just one of our responses after my first year of how we could help make talking about and addressing mental health more digestible and feel more feasible for our scholars and even our teachers and leaders.
Yeah. Well, and I think that there is a little bit of a stigma, right? It seems, and I especially think as someone who's a proponent of therapy and counseling
Mhm.
and even just like the different mental health support, sometimes it can feel like a big mountain to climb, right? It's
Absolutely.
like I know I need help, but that just in crisis or in have struggle, it
Yeah.
feels like a lot to try to do something. And so
It can be
making it one,
overwhelming.
yeah, yeah, overwhelming is a great word. And I
Mhm.
think that making it digestible and making it a small thing, it's just a small thing, like a minute that,
Mhm.
like, oh, I can do a minute, that adds up over time, but, like,
Yeah.
that feels doable, right? That feels like, okay, and I think for probably anybody in your community, whether it
Mhm.
be the students or teachers, for teachers, you're like, "Oh, man, these students need all this help. Where do
Yeah.
I even start?" And so I think that makes it, yeah, really digestible and,
Mhm.
doable on their part, and I love that you say just that you wanted to get people to talk about it
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Because to your point, the part of it being overwhelming is people just not being comfortable saying that they need help. And in the Black community, this is very pervasive.
Mhm.
There's a stigma attached, where people don't want anyone to think they're quote unquote crazy, or as adults that we can't handle our work or handle and manage life or stresses. And I think sometimes for our young people, it's very easy for them to think it's just normal, to
Mhm.
feel anxiety or to be depressed because of things that they may see around them. And because of the lack of acceptance from adults in terms of being able to talk about that, to unpack that, and to process that. One of the things that makes me really proud in my position is talking to my scholars and how so many of them are really clear about the need to address mental health. We've got some that started their own clubs and programs at school where they're making sure that they and their classmates understand what mental health practices can be positive, and what it looks like to be able to implement those as part of their life, not just at school, but as part of their regular life. And with the mental minute, when we say make it digestible, it's small things. We talk about reading a book that you enjoy. We talk about having positive affirmations. We talk about journaling, getting fresh air, breathing, and meditating. So we've got a number of tips that we share on a regular basis, and that we're collecting to basically serve as like a toolkit, where schools or anyone else would be able to use those elements as part of their supports for adults and children alike, because it is definitely something that we pay close attention to with our adults as well. And just to really double down on how much we are committed to this, our new strategic plan, which is called NOLA-PS Evolve, has 4 commitments, and one of them is on student, staff, and community well-being. And
Mm.
the mental minute fits squarely in that, along with the school-based mental health supports that we're providing, making sure that we have trauma-informed practices, and providing professional learning for mental health first aid for our adults. And then recently started what we call the Joyful Educator, which is a space for teachers to feel valued and appreciated, and for us to pour into our teachers.
Oh, man, it warms my heart so much to hear you say to pour into your teachers.
Mhm.
Because I think that, I just got done doing a webinar with my colleague, and we were talking about teacher workload and
Mhm.
helping teachers thrive in their roles. And I think that is, you know, they're doing the work on the front lines with the students,
Yep.
right? They are there every day. And so to pour into them, means that you're doing good. You're providing an investment in them that will pay off with the students. And so I love hearing that. That is wonderful. Hi there. Just interrupting this conversation with another MTSS hero shout out. Today, I want to share about Sylvia, a veteran primary ELA teacher from Chicago Public Schools. Her colleague shared this about her. She is most deserving to be recognized for her dedication to academic, social, and emotional well being of her students. What I value the most is her positive energy, relentless optimism, and caring spirit that she gives to the students. Sylvia is a unique educator who focuses on the whole child, and by that, I mean she meets the different social, emotional, and instructional needs of her students. This requires an open mind, selfless attitude, great skill, and above all, a desire to love, accept, and see the best in others. Thank you, Sylvia, for all the hard work that you do for your students and school. We celebrate you. Now, back to our conversation. I want to talk, I want to ask a little bit about the mental minute to kind of understand this. So, is this more of an initiative just to kind of say, take a mental minute, or what's the encouragement for, people who come across this reminder? Is there a sort of a practice that's in within the schools?
Yeah, it's something that we've shared with all of our schools, and essentially, it's making it so that you don't have to spend a lot of time. A lot of our schools have morning meetings, and they have various opportunities for students to decompress or to summarize their day or something of that nature. So our advice is always to just embed it in a time frame that's already set aside for either reflection or planning,
Okay.
and to let the students lead it. Let them get a good understanding of what feels great for them, and what resonates with them as it relates to their own mental health and wellness. And that also gets them talking about it. Asking questions about it and being curious about it makes a big difference. We introduced it at the beginning of this school year, and at this point for us, it's a matter of sharing, mostly on social media, and occasionally we do in-person work at the schools, but also connecting with our school leaders and their social workers and their school counselors to ensure that they have a variety of supports and resources. And then, like I said, it's not just about the children, because the adults have to be well as well. And so even things for the community to access. I even share a mental minute at board meetings, where we just
Mhm.
talk about just one element that we can do, whether it's a tip, or actually practice. I think the first time I introduced it at a board meeting, I asked everyone to stand up, and we did a breathing exercise. And we really try to make it something that can be easily embedded into your day. And then things that people don't think about that they can do for themselves and for others. One of the sessions that we had within our district team was around micro affirmations. And this was a new
Mm.
term for me, because you hear about microaggressions, right? Which is something that's, it's negative. But we talked about micro affirmations. What does it mean to smile at your colleagues or your scholars, and, use people's name, address them by their name,
Mm.
and give meaningful compliments, and to actively listen. And so, with the mental minute, as much as it is about self care, it's also about the fact that we're all in this work and in this space together, and we can thrive together and support each other, by also practicing positive affirmations and just paying closer attention to how we treat each other.
I really like that. I love that it's just a small thing and that you're kind of in living it out. And I love that you shared that you did it with the board, the school board, because I
Yeah,
think that even practicing that with the community can help bridge that gap too
yeah.
between the community and what's happening within the schools and your scholars. Um, and you're right, like, sometimes it's just those small things that,
Mhm.
are, easy to sort of dismiss as, "Oh,
Yeah,
that's, it's just a little thing," but that makes a big difference
yeah.
for your students. And I also wanted to highlight that you talked a little bit about sharing, making sure that there's support and resources for your
Mhm,
schools, and I think that that's a big deal for teachers because oftentimes we know we feel that pressure
mhm.
to help support students, but if we don't have the supports or the resources within the schools,
Right.
having, even if it's just a personnel of like having a school
Mhm.
counselor that's dedicated to that school versus
Yeah,
being shared across other schools, I think that that's really important. And you sit in that position to help make those decisions. So
yeah.
I appreciate that you mentioned that.
Yeah, so we have a partnership with Children's Hospital here. It's called Thrive Kids, and we have 15 of our schools that have intensive school-based mental health supports, and so it's a full wraparound services program where not only are we serving the children in school, but if dad needs glasses, we can make sure that appointment happens, and if transportation is an issue, we can ensure that we support along those lines, because you're absolutely right. There's so much work to be done, and teachers cannot do it all, and they should not be expected to do it all. And school counselors cannot do it all,
Yeah.
and especially when you're in a high needs community. And I think that was one of the things that we had to own, is the fact that our scholars did not create the world that they're living in, and the fact that
Mm,
there are a lot of needs here that might look different than if we were in a smaller or more rural city. And we have to address that accordingly, by ensuring that we've got the personnel, even if they're not people that we're hiring. It's partnerships. And the thing I love about my work here is how willing the community is to partner with us.
mhm.
Thrive Kids was made possible because of a $10 million investment from the city of New Orleans, and then also from the partnership with Children's Hospital to be able to provide the staffing. Because for our schools that are involved with that, they get a mental health coordinator, and they get people and staff who are available to do small group and individual counseling. Because where we want the mental minute to be something that people can wrap their arms around and that's digestible, we also want to really shine a light on the fact that it's okay to get help. It's okay
Mhm.
to go ahead and pursue therapy, and to have a process, just like you would if it was a physical situation. If you had a sprained ankle or were having problems breathing, hopefully you wouldn't ignore that. You would not say, "Oh, I'll
Yeah.
be okay. I'll just get more sleep tonight." And we want people to understand that with mental health and wellness, it is okay to seek the help and to get the help that you need for that also.
Yeah. I I love that you are just invested in the community's invested as well. I think that I know we've talked about on our podcast before, and in our company too. We really talk about, helping schools partner with their community. Sometimes
Mhm.
it's being very explicit with what your need is. Like if
Yeah,
that's the need, you're like, we need more we need resources for
hmm,
mental health. Who in the community can help provide that? And I think that that is key, because sometimes I think there's a lot of businesses and community members that wanna help the school, but
yeah,
they may not know particularly what the need is, and so it is
right,
about kind of bridging that gap and sharing, "Here's the specific need, here's
yeah.
how you can help?" So I think that
And
that's
working closely
wonderful.
with our professionals at the schools, because they know what's needed within their schools, and it does vary from one school to the next.
Yeah.
Because even within our larger community, when you're driving through New Orleans, you have parts of the city that have very different needs.
Mhm.
So I do think that making sure that our team members, our teachers, leaders, and staff have an opportunity to have a seat at the table, and that their voices are being amplified in the decision making processes as it relates to this.
Yeah. Well, and we talk, a lot about at Bringy Minds about MTSS and how, it's a system level infrastructure. And so it's so important to like have that support at the higher level.
Yeah,
And so I my last question really is, what advice would you give to school leaders experiencing some of these challenges associated with kind of garnering that
yeah,
system level support for initiatives and maybe like MTSS implementation, but
yeah.
how do you garner that support and that buy-in from those top leaders? How would someone come to you and ask for that support for something that they're wanting to shift and change?
Yeah. The first piece of advice that I would give is to start with the children, because when you listen to students and you really give them an opportunity to have their voices amplified, they're going to share with you what their challenges are. And you have to do this in a very meaningful and intentional way, not where you're placating them in terms of them, serving on a student council or something of that nature, making it a part of your decision making process. So, starting with the voices of children, but then also let the data drive you. One of the things that we did with Thrive Kids is we established a poverty baseline, a poverty threshold, where we were actually looking at where our needs were the greatest within our school district, so that we could aim our resources where they were most needed. And so let data guide you, but don't dismiss qualitative data, because talking to students and family members can go a long way to getting a better understanding of what's needed. And as it relates to the commitment from leaders, I believe in commitment more so than buy-in. I heard a speaker say once, if
Mm.
people can buy in, they can be bought out. And so it's really about getting a commitment, and I mean, to truly understand why the need is there. And for some people that might mean getting into a little bit of brain science and understanding what stress and anxiety does to the brain and the impact that it has on learning. Know your stakeholders and know who needs that type of information versus someone who may need to actually hear from a sixth grader who has contemplated suicide, or a senior who is struggling trying to make decisions about what happens after high school. Determine based on the needs of your community and who your stakeholders are, what data point, qualitative or quantitative, is going to have the biggest impact on them, and then include them in very meaningful planning and very meaningful updates as you move through whatever processes that you land on. And just know that it's a journey. This is not something where you arrive at that we can say, oh, we fixed mental health. It's a journey, and it's going to be something that we have to continually pay close attention to, in order to ensure that we're doing what's best for our scholars, our teachers, leaders, staff, and our families.
Yeah. Wow. That is wonderful advice. And you're right. Sometimes hearing from the students can
Mhm.
be really powerful because
Yep.
I am a storyteller and I
Yeah.
believe that stories have the power to change people's minds. And
Yeah.
so I do think that can be really impactful. Um, Dr. Williams, thank you so much for your time today. This has been so informative, and I love hearing about the work that you're doing. And I'm excited to hear more about the work that you continue to do in the district and the way that you support the students and families. And so, especially the joyful teacher thing, I might have to learn more about what you're doing there because
Oh, yeah.
that's really fun.
Love
So.
spreading the joy. Joy is one of my core values.
That is one of our core values here at Branching
Oh,
Minds. We love
nice.
having lots of fun, and joy is definitely embedded in what we do. So, thank you so much for being here, and I just appreciate your time. And we'll share out some of your resources and some more about the mental minute with in our show notes. But thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Thanks for listening to School and Around, a podcast hosted by Branching Minds. Go ahead and subscribe to our feed wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget, if you are enjoying our content, would you do us a favor and rate and review our podcast on iTunes? This helps others find our podcast and lets us know how much you love what we're creating. Branching Minds is an educational technology company using learning sciences and technology to help districts effectively personalize learning through MTSS. To learn more about us, check out our website, branchingminds.com, or follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn at Branching Minds.